Hey guys, welcome to Microsoft Windows XP Point of Sale Edition 2009. And specifically what this OS is it's your Windows XP operating system designed for a point of sale system. If you're ever curious where that registry modification we all made on our XP machines, where the updates came from, this is the system that those updates came from. More directly, this is the second edition of that system where those updates came from. Let's do the installation of this operating system and check it out. So right off the bat, there's clearly a difference between the installation of this particular system and the installation that we're going to find on our Windows XP professional systems. Not only from the look of it, but we'll find through the installation process there is a difference. So let's continue on. First thing we're going to do here is we're going to click on Next. Then it's going to ask us if we want to do an unintended installation or if we want to do a interactive install. Now, I don't have a built control set for Point of Sale 2009, so I'm going to do the interactive setup. Now, if you have something like a script built where you were going to script this and install this on multiple point of sale systems, you would do the unattended install. So basically, you would push it out to 50 machines, so you don't have to manually do each one. So we're going to click on Next. Then it's going to ask us for the product key. So I'm going to put that product key in and start it from the next screen. Okay, so the next question we're going to be asked is to agree for the license. So we're going to accept the license and click on Next. Then I'm going to ask us to personalize the system. Now this is your name and organization really should be like the name of the IT person that did the install and then the organization. So we're just going to do YTD and YouTube. And then we're going to click on Next. So if we now look at the storage drivers, do we want to do additional storage drivers? So this is going to be for if you have a point of sale system that's connected to a SCSI connection or an iSCSI connection, or maybe your disks are remote, even a NAS system or a SAN. Windows XP would require the additional drivers in order to install this. Or if you had like an Ultra 320 drive or something to that effect, SCSI, then perhaps you would need the drivers as well. Or if you had a RAID setup on the system, or maybe you're running RAID 1 or RAID 0 for performance on the actual system, you would need the additional drivers. This is on a VM. We have absolutely no need for that. So we're just going to do no additional storage drivers required, and we're going to continue on. So now we're going to see the unpartitioned disk space, which is 20 gigs. We're going to create a partition because on this version, unlike the other version you could just click on the unpartitioned space and click on Next, so the system would automatically partition the space for the operating system. In our version for Windows XP Point of Sale 2009, you have to create the partition first. So we'll create the partition. We'll say use the whole thing. We'll click OK. And then we could click on the partition and hit Next. So now it's going to ask us how we want to allocate the format, the table itself. So we're just going to leave it as NTFS, leave it as that. We're going to perform a quick format because this is, again, it's a VM and it's not necessarily to do a full format on a VM disk. And we're going to click on Next. So now it's going to ask us our language setting. Now if you need to input language here, you could, and that's not language as in a different language like Spanish versus English. That's language as in it's a point of sale system. So point of sale software usually has key presses that do certain things, F keys or the C key or D key or whatever. You hit a different key on the keyboard and it would do a different function. That's what this additional driver configuration or this additional scripting configuration is. The same thing for East Asian languages and stuff like that. So if this is for a Chinese system, so we're just going to leave it as it is and we're going to hit Next. Then it's going to ask us where we are. I'm in Eastern Standard Time. We're going to click and then we're going to hit Next. Then it's going to ask us what type of installation we want to do. So we could do the minimum installation, which is the bare bones of the operating system. However, for this, because we're going to use this as a desktop itself, we're going to leave the typical and we're going to click Next. Then we're going to change the computer name. And then we're going to do, so you should probably add additional to this. We're going to just give it a password. Now keep in mind the password portion in this is Windows 2008 server standard. So it requires a number, a special character, and a capital in order for the password to be taken. So you can't just use like password 123. That won't work. You can't use admin with a capital A1 exclamation. You know, like those things don't work. You have to have the complexity and you have to have the length, which I believe is 8 character minimum. So once you have the password entered, you could click on next. Okay. All right, so now it's going to ask us specifically for IP address settings. Now, understand that in this particular system, you can use DHCP if you don't check anything and just click on next. However, if you want to add this to a static IP address, this is where you would do it, and you configure the static IP address in DNS. And in the process of the interactive setup, we'll find that eventually it'll prompt us to ask us if we want to install the additional settings to add this automatically to the domain. So in other words, we can set it directly to the domain, just like the other version of XP. It's just a little prettier in this version. For the sake of this, I'm just going to leave it alone and leave it on DHCP and click on next. And it's going to ask us here if we want to join the workgroup or join the domain. We're going to leave it as workgroup and we're going to click on next. And then we're going to see the finalization of the setup. And this is basically the script that this thing is going to run from. Now, in all honesty, you could probably grab this, copy this out of here, and make your script out of this so you could push it to additional machines if you really wanted to. But for the sake of this, we're just going to click on install. Now, this is going to install the operating system. You're going to see that this is much different than it was inside of the Windows XP x86, the 32-bit version that we've all grown accustomed to as far as the installation, the way it looks, the process and its installing of the drivers. So then once it's finished installing all the drivers, it just prompts you that it has to reboot itself, just like regular Windows XP did at the end of the installation process. So now we're booting back into the Windows XP point of sale system. Okay, so this is where it gets a little different. Now what it's going to do, it's going to install some catalog features, some updates, some changes, some controls for the first boot. And the reason why is, again, this is a point of sale system, right? So it doesn't need things like Minecraft and Pinball installed from the factory, but it does require additional functional elements to allow your applications for your point of sale system to actually install and work correctly. So for instance here, we got plug and play devices. So we get additional drivers for things like scanners and for things like your keypad for your registers. That's part of this point of sale installation process, which again is different than your regular XP system. So once you have the components installed, the system will reset the setup flag and continue on the installation process. You should keep in mind that Windows XP embedded point of sale will likely reboot itself a dozen times in the process of the installation process. It's much, much more time consuming than the original XP configuration was. I believe the reason for this is because the system itself has a lot more pre-configured updates on it than the original XP system did. This starts off with Service Pack 3. It starts off with about 500 to 700 updates pre-installed. So once you get to the splash screen, as we see here during the installation process, this is basically where we will log into Windows for the first time. It's important to keep in mind, though, that this particular system, your username is going to be administrator. You have no choice on changing that during the installation process. So whatever your password was that you put in, that's your password, but your username is administrator. Okay, so once you have your username and password in, we're just going to click OK. And the system is going to load Windows for the first time. And here you are, that we're now in Windows Embedded Point of Sale. Again, 2009 edition. So this particular system now is running, but we're going to need to do some, I guess, preliminary installations before we could get full screen, before we could get the ability to install updates. There is a series of updates that we'll need to apply. So let's apply those updates, and then let's kick off this video from our second part where we start to go through this operating system, the differences, the updates, the patch revisions, and the processes. Thanks for watching the installation, guys. Hey guys, like and subscribe for more videos. I'll keep them coming if you guys keep subscribing. Take it easy.